Welcome. This is Mr. Patriarch. Thank you for joining me today on a rainy Sunday late morning here in Alaska. I'm a little bit sick today, so if you hear me doing what I am now, that's why. I was going to do some recording with Chris Gard, friend of the channel, today, but my voice is just simply not up to it. So we'll be doing this live stream instead. That being said, I did plan on putting a video out today. I put out a poll last night for the members to vote on whether we talk about this, whether I'd put out the next chapter for my much delayed Reflections of a Russian Statesman series, or if I'd discuss my thoughts on the Turner's Frontier thesis, which is a historical thesis about the effect of the frontier on the American psyche and character. So we voted on this one, and I was half tempted to fortify the election and for the good of the people, do this stream anyways. So I'm glad it worked out. I see we have two Chads in the audience currently. Imperial Crusader 21, howdy. Thank you very much. If you guys are new here, please feel free to subscribe to this channel. We put out content maybe about once a week, once every 2 weeks, typically. Discuss a variety of topics, including history, culture, metapolitics, orthodoxy, and being a dad, being a husband, stuff like that. So if you like what you see here, please consider subscribing. And you can also support the show and my growing family with links to Subscribestar and PayPal. Links for that can be found below. Of course, if there are any questions or comments during the course of this live stream, priority will be given to Super Chats. The Super Chat function is a handy way to also, on the fly, support the channel and make sure that your message is received by me. So let's get started. The theme for this show is in the title. A little esoteric, a little hard to understand perhaps. Friendship, loyalty, legacy, and Florida. First three kind of make sense. But Florida, why Florida? I'm going to get into that. It has to do with a trip that I took maybe about 2 weeks ago. Thereabouts. Sorry. As some of you may know, I put a post on my community tab that I would not be available for a week or two. I would not be able to make a video because I was going down to Florida to see a dying friend, which I did. And I spent several days down there. I'm going to share some highlights from that trip and kind of what I hope we can achieve collectively and individually in this life, fundamentally, largely based off things I saw and experienced down there and leading up to it. So, trip to Florida. About a week and a half ago, I went down to Florida to visit my good friend and dad of my other friends, Bill. We call him Bill. So, who was Bill? Bill was, again, the father of two of my closest and oldest friends. I had known Bill, his wife, and boys since I was about 6 years old. So in the late 90s, I guess. Um, and in all that time since then, we had stayed friends. Bill's children, his sons, who are also fraternal twins, by the way. So I'm a fraternal twin, and Bill's boys are fraternal twins. So it was a natural pairing that we would become buddies. And our initial connection was through first Cub Scouts and then later Boy Scouts. And Bill volunteered a lot of his time while we were in Cub Scouts, and then eventually became an assistant scoutmaster and then scoutmaster of our Boy Scout troop. He gave lots of years of service to the Boy Scout troop. Was very involved, led us on many expeditions, and really encouraged the relationships and skills and lessons that we would learn in Scouts. Not only that, he was also just a generally wonderful man. He was a father figure to those who had difficulty with their dads. I know a couple of old friends of mine really looked up to Bill a lot, and I looked up to Bill a lot too in my own way. Bill was fairly significantly older than my dad. My dad's pretty young. And Bill was kind of an older, wiser mentor figure in my life, who I always respected a great deal and come to love as a friend, as a teacher, along with his boys. And his boys, I think, really soaked up a lot of the lessons that Bill had to pass on. Lessons of conscientiousness, lessons of friendship, lessons of loyalty, of being loyal to your friends, of being loyal to your family. And even though in some ways, kind of going down the what you might call the spiritual path that I have with orthodoxy and also kind of more reactionary political thinking, we me and the boys, Bill's sons, kind of diverged a bit, but always, and we saw this really on the trip and even before then, just talking, there's always been a sense of loyalty between us. A sense that even if we might disagree or find ourselves on different sides of an argument, there was a bond of loyalty and obligation to each other and understanding that despite our differences, disagreements, or just divergent interests, that we respected each other as men, first as boys and then as men, and would focus on that, never sell each other out or write each other off, and that we would be predisposed to helping each other if need be. There's been a couple times in my life where that was offered by Bill's kids, Bill's sons, my friends. And it turns out I didn't need help in those circumstances or as much help as might have been. But the fact that it was available and offered is indicative of this firm belief in loyalty and sacrifice for each other, if need be. And that friendship is not merely a situation where I feel good being around you, you feel good being around me, and then the moment that's not the case, we're going to split. Yes, I do really enjoy hanging out with them, and they enjoy hanging out with me. But that's not fundamentally what drives loyalty, and that's not what drives sacrifice, which are necessary conditions to make a friendship last beyond merely proximity, convenience, or whatever. So, my last trip to Florida a couple weeks ago, I get a message from one of Bill's sons, who I'm still, um, in close contact with. He mentioned that his dad, Bill, is dying, basically. I was at work when I got this message and thought about it. And I looked at airfare tickets for next day. And I thought about maybe going over the weekend. And he was like, wow, are you thinking about coming down? I'm like, yes, I am. It's a long flight from Alaska to Florida. But I think I can pull it off. And he's like, well, just want you to know that Dad might not make it to the weekend. So if you plan on coming, a day or two would probably be good. I thought, okay. So I looked at ticket prices and ended up leaving for Florida the next evening. And when I arrived there, Bill had a very aggressive type of throat cancer. He was not a smoker. And in fact, they took some genetic info from him so that they could figure out how the heck somebody as healthy as him, got throat cancer. He had a stoma, and he couldn't talk, and he had horrible swelling. But when I arrived there, Bill was moved to tears by my being there. And then naturally, of course, I was as well. And I just talked to him, told him what I was doing with my life, told him about my family, my involvement with church. Bill was also a Christian, by the way, a kind of American evangelical type, and told him about the struggles with my brother, and that was it. Also, connected to this was the fact that our other friend, we'll call him Tim, had come down to see Bill as well the day before I did. And he was staying for a couple of days. Tim's in Texas currently. And I just thought it's so funny because about 8 years ago was the last time we were all in Florida to see Bill. And it was the same crowd. So there was Ginny and Bill, his boys, Tim, myself, and my friends, one of Bill's son's wives, was there. And it was the same gang, all back together, all now there to basically pay their respects to Bill before he passed. And I just thought that was such a beautiful testament to the sort of man he is and sort of what his influence meant to all of us, what his relationship to us individually meant. It's kind of like in there's got to be a movie. I want to say it's Stand By Me, where like a friend dies and then they all kind of like sort of reconnect a little bit, something like that. And what this trip meant to me was, and is what it meant to me is, I think, what it meant to Bill, which is that I basically wanted him to know that, not through words, but through actions, that, I loved him and I honor him, and I wanted to see him before he passed. And that was it. Um, and ever since the death of my father-in-law, which was in, gosh, I think that was in January, or no, it was February of 2022. With my father-in-law, when he passed, it was not expected. We knew he was sick. He had pneumonia, but we thought he'd pull through, and he thought he'd pull through, to be honest, up until the day that he died. So that was a bit more of a shock, a bit more of a surprise. But I'm forever thankful that when he passed, the day he passed, his niece, his wife, his pastor, all went to see him. And then after they left, because they're stupid COVID regulations preventing large amounts of people from visiting. And then my wife, her sister, and myself went to go visit him. And that was when he passed, was when we were with him. And ever since that event, I told myself that I never wanted to miss saying goodbye to someone if I could help it. Somebody who was close to me, somebody whose life and influence meant a lot. And basically, and it's not really for any personal reason for myself. I mean, seeing somebody expire, you don't want them to feel alone. And especially if it's someone you love. And the goal of my trip was, I wanted Bill to not only know, but experience my love for him. In the same way that, kind of unplanned, that's what happened with my father-in-law. I wanted him to know and experience, not just know, but experience love from people who care about him as he departs. And so that I may pray for him as well. And that was one of the other things I did was, I was like, I'm going to be the chaplain while he's down there. And I did, and I prayed for him. It was great. And Bill and his wife especially really appreciated it. And one of Bill's last words to me before he kind of slipped into deep sleep before passing away, he had a little notepad that he'd write on to communicate. And one of the last things he said to me, to us, was, I can't believe I've been blessed with so much goodness and so much beauty for so long. And I thought that's a perfect way to go. A man focused on the beauty of life and the blessings that God has bestowed upon him. Here's a man who had a very difficult childhood, whose was not particularly well off, to say the least, when he was young. He grew up in a dirt poor part of northern Florida, and he managed to make a decent life for himself. And then here he was dying in considerable pain and disfigured by this disease. And in the last moments of his life, all he could think about was the gratitude that he had for what he was given. And after he said that, the last thing he said to Ginny, his wife, was basically, make sure you live and tell other people about the love of Jesus Christ. And that's the sort of man he was. And I think Bill's life tied it into this idea of friendship, loyalty, and legacy. His life shows very clearly to me that God chooses to work primarily through people to show his love, largely through the kindness they show to each other. God's mercy and love is largely made manifest through the changing of our hearts first, and then what we are able to do for one another. That's what Bill did. That's what I wanted to give to him. And that's what I want to see for us and our guys. Bill's legacy, apart from the obvious, his sons, it's an obvious legacy right there. It was more than that. It was the lives of particularly young men, such as myself, such as our other friend who came to visit him, the boys in Boy Scouts, people he helped with his business, people he witnessed to, and shared the gospel with. That was his real legacy, is the lives he impacted. And it's kind of corny to quote Gladiator, but they say in that movie, what we do in this life echoes through eternity. And that's true. We don't know the ways in which God's path for us will affect the course of history, just the lives of people around us. And that's basically the lesson of Bill's life. Sacrifice, love, and service are the necessary things, what's required to build real community. You can't build it on ideology. You can't build it on, hating the other team. That might prove as a nexus point for identifying who could potentially be your guy, right? So let's say I am Orthodox, and let's say I want to start an organization using the Orthodox faith as an initial proxy to do that. Might not be a bad idea. But once you have sort of very broad, simple points of agreement, really what actually builds things, really what actually changes the world around us, really what actually makes and sustains institutions and ways of life are built on sacrifice, love, and service. These things are what create legacy and inspire accomplishment and growth and life in the face of decay. So I guess to end this stream, that would be my word for you. Try to be like Bill. And be motivated by first love, be loyal to what you love, develop friendships for what you love, and serve what you love, and sacrifice for it. And if you're able to do that, whether it's in the global American empire, China, wherever, doesn't matter where you are, it really doesn't. You'll be able to carve off a little piece of, not carve off, you'll be able to cultivate a little piece of what should be and breathe life into it. And if you're able, and if you're willing to put in those things, it will, that, regardless of whatever's happening at large, that little piece will be worth the effort in and of itself to sustain and to hopefully pass on something of value, something transcendent to the next generation. All right, that was a little heavy, but I'll read your comments now. Let's see here. Join late. Did your friend pass away? Yes. He passed away the day before I left. In my opinion, from Fanor, in my opinion, friendship amongst men is one of the purest forms of love. Absolutely. I would 100% agree with that. Does Alaska depress you in the winter? Not really. I'm just so used to it. Like, I spent my whole life here. But I will say that it definitely felt longer. It feels longer now that I've lived in South Africa, for sure. So depressed, no. Wishing it would be over maybe a month sooner, yes. But no place is perfect. As I've said on numerous occasions, the reason why Alaska is not like the rest of the West Coast is because of the winters and because of its isolation relative to the rest of the country. So for that reason, I am willing to accept and embrace the winter. Alaska is beautiful, most beautiful. Perfect phrase. Thank you. I'm not sure which phrase you were talking about, but I will accept your praise. RCW, most men are aware of a mysterious memory. I suppose so, although it's a little cryptic. I'm not sure what that means. All right, guys. It's been a low-key, intimate stream with a small audience of the biggest chads of the subscribers. Thank you very much, everybody, for being here. I really appreciate it. Oh, yeah, the gladiator phrase. That is, yeah. What we do in this life echoes in eternity. But in any case, thank you guys for being here. Again, if you like this video, give it a like, give it a comment. If you have a specific memory or experience that kind of echoes what I'm trying to get at in the stream, ideas of friendship, loyalty, legacy, and service that you'd like to share, I'd appreciate if you shared it in the comments below. I'd like to read about your experiences in this matter. I think it's important, and I think that sharing these stories is important as well. Not so you could talk about yourself, for the sake of attention or whatever, but I really do think that one of the great things about the past, which we've largely left behind, is the ability to share wisdom through other people, through stories. And that's all I was trying to do here today. And I'd like to hear your stories on this. So thank you very much. And I will see you next time. Have a blessed Sunday, Patriarch.